thanks so much, and I appreciate everybody tuning in today, wherever you are in the cyber universe. We're going to have an interesting conversation with two of my friends and two folks who have an incredible story, and the story, is now a book, a headline book's title called My Time to Shine. It was chronicled by the author Michael Willard. Michael's written 16 books, fiction, nonfiction, and he said, look, these guys have a story I want to help tell, and we're happy to have them on today. True rock and roll music royalty. The gentleman in the sweater there spent 10 years as one of the lead singers of Atlantic Records' legendary Drifters, 1975 to 1985, performed alongside Johnny Moore and Benny King in that group. Say hi to Mr. Joe Blunt. Hello, Mr. Blunt.
Hello there.
And the gentleman in the white shirt spent over 2 decades as the lead singer of one of the groups that you automatically think of when you think musical romance. He was the lead singer of the Platters, Mr. Joe Coleman. Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Happy to be here.
So now we have folks that are watching on Facebook. We have folks that are watching the Zoom call. The book is My Time to Shine by Michael Willard. You can get your autographed copy at headlinebooks.com. There's also a link on the right side. And you guys have a pretty incredible story outside those years in the music business. And it starts when you're just itty-bitty little kids. You guys met Joe and Joe in church, and I think it all started, Joe Coleman, because your mom was a choir director. Is that right?
Choir director, yep. The director of the junior choir at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, 2nd and Rhode Island Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C. Yeah. So, as the story goes, I was, well, first of all, I have to tell you, she called me Joey. So
Joey,
yeah. So, so one day I'm coming home from school, about 7 or 8 years old, and she yells downstairs, said, "Joey, it's time to get ready for choir rehearsal." And I said, "Mom, I'm not in the choir." And she said, "Oh, I didn't tell you? You are in the choir." So it's actually one of my favorite stories, and that's it just so happens that Mr. Blunt's mom was the co-director of that choir. And so I don't think he recalls being asked to join either. I think it was just kind of understood that he was going to be in that choir. And that's where we learned everything we know about music, really, if you get right down to it. Yeah.
You were drafted as well. So, Joe Blunt, do you have recollections of meeting a 7 or 8 year old Joe Coleman? Do you remember all this happening?
Yeah, it kind of rings a bell. It's an interesting story, I think, in regard to the fact that we've known each other for all these years, too many to even count. And, those days back then when we started out singing in the junior choir and all that were some interesting times, because we were quite young then, 7 or 8 years old, and it was quite a time. It was an introduction to music, and in that respect, it was a well-spent time.
You know what's interesting to me, Joe Coleman, is that you guys met as children and performed in various groups together on into your 20s, and then went your own separate ways into these legendary groups. I should tell you, there's a third guy, Glenn Leonard, that you grew up with, who went on to be in the Temptations, and then after all those groups, you came back together later in life. I mean, what a fascinating story. So, where in all this did the third guy, did Glenn Leonard come in? Was he in junior high with you guys, or how did you guys all meet?
Well, in actual fact, Glenn and I went to junior high school and high school together, and I began singing with them in another group called the Chance, way back in 1967, somewhere around in there. And so we started out together back then. Our first recording experience was with called the Chancellor, a song called Sad Avenue, local record label, and that's how it all began.
Wow. And by the way, if you we're going to have some visual and audio treats as we talk about My Time to Shine. the book about these guys. And the first audio treat we'll have is Shaylee in our office is going to put the link. We actually have the link, Joe, to Sad Avenue by the Chancellors, and she's going to post that for folks to listen to after we wrap up the interview today. Sad Avenue was recorded when you were how old?
I was 18 years old, I believe.
And you said it was a regional hit in the Washington, D.C. area where you grew up. So what does that do to your head as an 18-year-old kid when you hear your song on the radio?
He's got a list,
Well,
so I looked at it quickly.
It was quite an experience. I mean, it's nothing like being involved in a musical project and then hearing it played on the radio for the first time.
Sure.
Quite an experience.
Flip the page and then it.
Now, and Joe Coleman, around this time when Blunt and Leonard were in their own group and they, were in the Chancellors doing Sad Avenue, you wound up spending some time. This was in the Vietnam era. You served during the Vietnam era. It was the Air Force. Is that right?
The Air Force, yes. Mm-hmm.
And you sang overseas a lot. I read in the book.
Yeah, that's right. They finally caught up with me, and I was in the Air Force, and my first tour of duty was in Japan, in Tokyo, Japan.
Right.
There, I joined a group called the Sensations. It was a very, very popular group over there at the time. We traveled all over the country, from one end to the other, Osaka to Tokyo, to Yokohama, just everywhere. It was a fabulous time. I also became a member of the Fifth Avenue show band, for the Air Force show band, and we toured Korea, and that's where I got my first experience with the kimchi.
How'd that go?
Oh my Lord. Couldn't breathe. It was the most amazing situation because it's that's fermented in the ground and all that sort of thing. And so we would be performing in these huge arenas, and kimchi would be just everywhere. It just took over the room. But it was a great and wonderful time. That's where I performed with Lou Rawls.
Wow.
B.B. King, Ike and Tina Turner, all those guys that came over there. We worked at a club called the Mugen over there in Shinjuku, and it was just a fantastic time. Yeah, it was great.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to Joe Coleman, former lead singer of the Platters, Joe Blunt from the Drifters. They're now part of a group called Voices of Classic Soul. And you can check out voicesofclassicsoul.com to find out more about them, and check out My Time to Shine, the book of their incredible lives from Headline Books. And it's available now at headlinebooks.com. There's also a link in the chat room, whether you're watching on Facebook or on Zoom. And I have to tell you, Joe, you just mentioned you sang with Ike and Tina Turner. A Tina Turner has registered to watch the conference today. So we may actually have Tina Turner tuning in today, which is pretty amazing. From somewhere overseas.
Okay, that'd be a lovely thing. Hey, Tina, what's up?
Bringing it all back together. So Joe Blunt, while Joe Coleman is in Japan and he's singing all over Asia, you and Glenn have gone on to form a group called the True Reflections. And at what point does Joe Coleman become a part of all that?
Well, when we originally formed True Reflections, it was a three-man group trying to get off the ground there. But just signed a contract with Atlantic Records and trying to move forward. And it was right about that time that I myself was drafted into the military, and I wound up joining the National Guard, and we needed to continue the process that we were in at that point, trying to get the True Reflection off the ground. And I was able to contact Coleman, and as it turned out, was available at the time. And I said, well, can you come in and pick up the slack and add something to the whole project? And did that. And as a matter of fact, right around the time that we were trying to put the album together, Coleman came in and stepped in, did a great job on the album. lot of the vocals and so forth were his leads. It was a good experience all the way around for everybody involved.
We're talking to Joe Blunt, former lead singer of the Drifters, Joe Coleman, former lead singer of the Platters, and the book is My Time to Shine from Headline Books, available at the Headline Books website. And if you're just joining us on Facebook or on Zoom, thank you so much for being with us today. You know, I would love if we could show a couple of pictures of the group in action. And Ashley back in the Headline Books office has some photos, and I would love to get a couple of comments. There's the cover of the book now. As part of the Zoom into Books event. My Time to Shine, written by J. Michael Willard, who's a fantastic author. And Joe Coleman, talk to me a little bit about the process of you guys composing this book and how the interviews worked with Mike Willard when he was talking to you. You know, you're going way back in time. Was it like peeling back the layers of an onion to remember these stories from so far back?
How about that? It was quite the whole process was just an amazing thing to me, because I never even considered the possibility of being the subject of a book. And so when Michael came to us and through your efforts to talk to us about a book, it took a while for me to even take it all in. And certainly it caused me to have to go back and take a look at and review. It was kind of my past and some of all of the things that made up my life and the people that were instrumental in helping me move forward and all of that. And it was just something to a time of reflection that was really it was healing. It almost had a healing effect for me, believe it or not. To go back and talk about all those things and reflect on how long it is that I've known these guys, Mr. Blunt. I mean, to be kids together in junior choir and to be singing, be stage mates now is just this amazing story in and of itself. And so, yes, it was just a wonderful thing.
And Joe Coleman, I want to stay with you for just a second. We talked about, you mentioned the word reflection. When you joined the True Reflections, the group, this is a group that was signed to Atlantic Records, and you guys toured with all the big acts from the early 70s and did very well. And by the way, Shaylee in our office is going to post the lead single from that album so that folks can listen to it after this all happens. And you were the lead singer of the title track of that album. What do you remember about recording with the True Reflections?
What I remember is just being a whirlwind of what in the heck is going on. I was new to the recording side of the business, and it was just an amazing time. What we knew was that we had a really good group. You know, everyone in the group was really talented. Joe had that smooth, which he still has to this very day, the smooth baritone that I'm not going to get into that because it sounds like fandom now, doesn't it?
It does a little bit, yes.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Joe's, but and Glenn's voice was just crystal clear, and Bobby had that rough kind of Teddy Pendergrass kind of thing. So we knew we had a really, really good group, and it was quite an experience because we did a lot of the album up there in Philly at Sigma Sound, which was the hot studio, and the recording teams up there. So we worked with all the guys, Norman Harris and all those wonderful producers and musicians up there, and so it was a great time and overwhelming for me, but I loved every minute of it.
We're talking to Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt, former lead singers of the Platters and the Drifters, on this Zoom into Books event sponsored by our friends at headlinebooks.com. And if you'd like to pick up My Time to Shine by J. Michael Willard, the story of Joe and Glenn, the former lead singers of the Platters, the Drifters, and the Temptations, you can do so. All the details are there in the chat room. And whether you're watching on Facebook or Zoom, we sure appreciate you being with us today. Joe Blunt, you had a hand in the production and management into the business after the True Reflections, but then I found it fascinating that for a while you left the music business altogether. So tell me about that point in your life and how that was as an adjustment and what led you to that.
Well, interesting question. I had spent several years with the Drifters, primarily doing a lot of work overseas. During that period of time, the Drifters, and even now, I guess, are still have always been very popular in the European market, particularly in England. And so forth. During my time with the Drifters, probably about 6 months out of the year, off and on, in Europe. And as a family person, that could be a big life. Time came when I wanted to come home and try to do some other things. And I got involved in management, a company called Right Track Management, and started dealing with some local acts that we managed to get signed to some contracts. It was quite a good experience for me, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But I still miss singing somewhat. But it was just that time when we were trying to get some other things off the ground.
Joe Blunt, Joe Coleman, our guest today, as part of this Zoom Into Books event with their book, My Time to Shine. If you'd like to pick up a copy, I should mention these are autographed by all three members of the group, and you can pick one up at the link in the chat room there, or you can visit headlinebooks.com, headlinebooks.com, and as they say, a signed book is a sold book. So be sure to pick these up while supplies last, because they don't have a whole ton of them, but do grab an autographed book from Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt. So Joe Coleman, you also, and we're going to show a few extra pictures from the slideshow. I'd love to look at some of these. You spent some time sort of in the musical wilderness there, trying to figure out what to do after the True Reflection, went up in flames. Joe Blunt finds himself in the Drifters in England, and they're doing great. And Glenn Leonard is in the Temptations, and they're touring all over. You, on the other hand, unfortunately, is taking a minute for things to happen. So, I would love to talk to you about sort of that time in the wilderness for you in New York City, because things got pretty desperate for young Joe Coleman after the True Reflections.
Yeah. Well, let me back up for a second. During the part of that wilderness time was in Washington D.C. itself, right? I'm back home effectively, and my brother and this gentleman by the name of Richard Gant, who was a tenor singer, were forming a group. I was there. They were bringing in people to audition around me, right? And finally one day, no one was working out. He says, well, Joe, what are you doing? So we formed a group called Topaz at the time, and we had changed the name to Mirage. We joined RCA, the RCA label, and that sort of thing. We recorded an album for them, which ended up in File 13, and then it's to New York, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm working as a parking lot attendant at a parking garage, parking cars, folks flipping quarters to me, if they thank you after bringing the car. And, wow, this is not good. This is not good. And as we tell it in the book, the time came when it got a little rough for me. And then things turned kind of bad.
You mentioned that group Mirage.
Yes.
And they recorded for RCA Records in the late 70s, right?
That's correct.
Now, that's a time when lots of musical acts, it was a visual medium. This is when groups like the Commodores had the big outfits, and on the rock and roll side, Kiss did the fire and the flames and all that. And, I just happened to have, hang on just a second, I've got right here a copy of the Mirage album.
Oh no, you didn't do that. Oh Lord.
And there's Joe Coleman right there.
Isn't that amazing?
Shirt completely open in the center of Mirage. And this is some sort of Casanova kind of thing happening here.
Yeah. We were the three, Casanova, Romeo, D'Artagnan or something like that. We were the lovers of the past.
Wow.
Hey,
All right.
that was-
Well, I'm not sure about the artistic choice, but the music is really good on this
music
album.
is really good. It just shows you what you'll do to make money.
That's right.
That was a great album, by the way.
It is a great album.
Great
And,
album.
the
Great
vocals are
material.
just incredible. And the songwriting is great there. Hey, we're getting questions that are coming in, and I do want to ask some of these questions as we go along. And Joe Blunt, I'll start with you. A young lady writes in and wants to know, and I think this is fascinating because I know you guys personally, how you balance your professional and personal lives. Many people think that you're in the music business and it's all parties and it's all fun, and certainly you have an enjoyable job, but Joe Blunt, you're a family guy, you've got kids, so how do you balance show business and home business?
Well, I won't say it's easy. Of course, now my quote-unquote kids are grown men themselves and have their own families.
Right.
But when they were young, it was kind of difficult being away from home a lot. But I tried to make up for the time when I came. And when I was here, I tried to spend as much time with the boys and wife as I could. And I think that the intention of trying to juggle those two separate lives, so to speak, so difficult, is achievable if you put your mind to it. And it was quite a time. I look back on it all and I wonder how it may have been different if things just hadn't turned out the way they did. But unfortunately, we got through it.
Well, clearly you've done very well because you and your wife Paula have been married for how many years?
Yeah, a lot of years.
He's not going to give it up.
Wow.
Now, what about you, Joe Coleman? Balancing the personal and professional, because things were tough for you, but eventually you joined the Platters and you spent, I think it was 20, if I remember the book right, 22 years in that group.
Yeah, something like that, about 22 years. Yeah.
And you were able to sit down in Las Vegas. You guys had a long-running show at the legendary Sahara Hotel, and you're top of your game. You write musicals and you're a playwright, and it all comes together professionally for you. But that, that's got to be a balancing act for you too. How do you balance the personal and professional for you?
Well, to your point, yes, it's quite a task. But the key to it is to have a very understanding and supportive wife. I'm a guy that married late in life. I considered myself to be as I say it, now, ladies, please don't get upset, but a track star. I was
on the run.
On the run, I was moving fast, and let's say that my interest in marriage was somewhat limited at that time, because I'm not even sure why, because my parents had a very loving, long-lasting. We were married for 37 years or something like that, 38 years. Well, I guess longer than that, really. But somehow I was like, I don't know. And so for many years, that wasn't a real issue for me. But at the point that I became more mature and understand what I need to do, I found a person who would stand with me through thick and thin, who supported my travel, who took care of the household while I was away. And when I came home, I just tried to make sure that I paid a lot of attention to everyone in the house, to kind of let them know that they were missed, and I'm glad to be home.
Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt, our guests today. They are the subjects of the book My Time to Shine by J. Michael Willard from headlinebooks.com, and there's a link that you can pick that up, and it's autographed by all three guys, by Glenn and Joe. So if you would like to pick up My Time to Shine, please do. Hey, while we've got those pictures up, let's take a look at some action shots of the guys here. Let's see what we can find here as we scroll through and take a look at there they are.
Oh, man.
On stage.
Still
wearing the matching suits and doing the dance moves. And while we look at some of these pictures, I'll ask a couple of the other questions that we have coming along. So feel free to go ahead and scroll through some of those photos. One of the listeners and viewers wants to know if Mirage ever performed in D.C., and if so, do you remember the name of any of the places here in D.C. that you performed?
Well, we didn't perform very much in DC, but we did perform at like at Rand's, the chapter 2, I believe it was. Joe, you remember the chapter? Was that? And places like that, the Mark IV. Those are the names of the places that we primarily did locally here. Yeah.
Who's the young lady in the photo? Is she the fourth member of the group? Who is that in that photo?
She was the Secretary of Health, and Service. She was the secretary. What do you call that? The health department.
Health and Human Services.
She was Secretary General of the.
Wow.
Yep.
So you're living large. You're hanging out with important people there.
No, we don't mess around. We don't.
All right, let's look at another picture. This will be like discovery for all of us. We're looking at the family photo album of Joe Blunt and Joe Coleman, former lead singers of the Platters and the Drifters. Here you guys are signing copies of the book and your CDs, and I see down there, you know, you recorded a Christmas CD, and Joe Blunt, the Drifters actually have one of the most famous Christmas songs of all time, their version of White Christmas, which you now see in the Home Alone movie every year.
Oh yeah, it's Christmas classic.
Was there a favorite of all the Drifter songs that you like to sing the most? I mean, there's so many hits. I mean, that group just had hit after hit after hit.
There were quite a few hits, that's for sure. My personal favorite probably On Broadway. Love that song. I wasn't in the group at the time it was recorded, but it was a great song. I always, that's one of the ones I always held dear to my heart. Once I joined the group, I guess that's what was so amazing to me. Coming into a group that had so many great hit records was an amazing experience in itself. And it's been quite a lot of fun, actually. Just some of the songs that bring back a lot of memories to a lot of people. That's a good thing.
All right. And by the way, Joe Blunt, I'm not sure why, but we're having a little bit of a tough time hearing you. If it's possible for you to get closer to your microphone, it may help. And we'll see if that makes it a little bit better. Joe Coleman, what about you? A favorite Platters song to sing? You know, their songs were very sort of theatrical and filled with all of this emotion. And you bring it, you know, whenever you do these songs with Voices of Classic Soul. Oh, there you guys are at, I think, a Washington Wizards game performing.
Yes, yes.
Is there a favorite Platters song for you?
Yes, I think really my favorite, talking about the drama and the dramatic effect of those songs, is probably My Prayer. My prayer is to linger with you at the end of the day, in a dream that's divine, that kind of stuff, you know. Yeah, so that's one of my favorites, is My Prayer. It's that, you know, when I talk to the bands we use around the country, I tell them, advise them that these songs are very emotional, so you can't play them straight. You can't just play the notes. You gotta really do a kind of have an emotional connection to the song musically. So, you know, when we do smoke get your eye in your eyes and stuff like that, it's got to have that depth and emotion. Yeah.
You know, he sings like that, like there's a virtual tip jar out there for him. I don't think there's a way to. Joe Coleman, Joe Blunt, our guest today on Zoom Into Books with Headline Books. And wow, now there's a picture with you and a legend that you both have worked with. Joe Coleman, tell me about your memories of the legendary Ben E. King.
I tell you, I know Joe will agree with me. What a fantastic guy! I just love that guy, and it was very painful for me when he passed. This is a shot of us. We were in probably at the Blue Note in Tokyo, Japan. Yeah, before we would tour, he and I. Probably for the last several years before his passing, we had annual tours to Japan, and it was always an amazing time. And they just simply loved Ben E. King over there. You know, I just kind of stood back and they just let them, and they would just eat him up. Great and wonderful guy. miss him a lot. Actually spoke to him probably a few days before he passed, called him up, didn't realize he was in the hospital. He didn't tell me. And I asked him, I was working on a project and asked if he would be willing to help me with it. Sure, Joe, you know, and it was just a few days after that he was gone, and it just broke my heart. Wonderful.
So, Joe Blunt, when you were in the Drifters, you actually had the opportunity to sing with Benny King, and you tell an amazing story in the book, In My Time to Shine, about you know, how you go through the audition process. I believe it was in New York, if I remember from reading the book. And then you guys, shortly after that, get on an airplane, and you're about to sit down at Heathrow in London. And when you get there, there's a lot of commotion happening. So why don't you take the story from there?
Well, going back to those days, when I first joined the Drifters, I wasn't aware of the fact that they had established a tremendous following in the European market. Because at that time, the group was kind of thought of as an oldies but goodies kind of group, and they were doing work in the United States, but not on the level that they were doing in Europe, as it turned out. So when I was asked to join the group, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And I remember very vividly, we landed at Heathrow Airport in London. And I turned to Clyde Brown, who was a member of the Drifters at that time as well, and noted that there was a lot of photographers and so forth huddled around waiting for the plane to land and everything, waiting for the passengers to disembark. And I turned to him and said, well, there must be somebody famous on the plane. Who are all these people with these cameras and everything? He looked at me and said, they're here for us, Joe.
Wow.
And I was,
Wow.
oh, yeah. And I just really wasn't expecting that kind of response. But what had happened was that over a period of, I guess, 5 or 6 years, the group had a number of chart records in England, big records in England that were never even released in America.
Do you, was there a time, Joe Blunt, when you're a member of the Drifters in England, as you said, they had this huge career resurgence there, and you looked over to your left or to your right, perhaps, and you're singing and dancing, and you go, my God, I'm on stage with Benny King and Johnny Morris singing these songs. I mean, was there ever that light bulb moment where you went, I can't believe this is me?
Well, yeah, that happened quite a few times, particularly in certain kinds of engagements where, for example, I remember we played at a venue in England that was called Talk of the Town, very popular club where a lot of big acts performed at one time or another. And when you walk out on the stage there and you look around, you think of all the huge entertainers who have been on that stage. It is a kind of humbling experience. Between that and places like the London Palladium and things like that, where people like Frank Sinatra and Bob Hope and all kinds of acts all around the world have performed. It is a very humbling experience. It had quite an impact on me.
Joe Blunt, by the way, as a member of the Drifters in England, had the opportunity to record an album with the Drifters, and we're going to post one of the songs that Joe sang lead vocals on. I think it was called When You're Coming Home. And as he mentioned, the Drifters had a whole second career in England with #1 hits, a bunch of them that were never even released here. All right, Joe Coleman, here you are with some folks from my home state. That's Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Shelley Moore Capito, and you're standing right in between the Democrat and Republican. So you're separating the sea. You're like Moses parting the Red Sea there, keeping them apart. Now, actually, they both do great work for our home state. Do you remember where this picture was taken and what you were doing there?
Well, we were at the World War II Memorial. Yeah, and we were there to honor the veterans. You'll give me the name, but yeah, we were honoring the veterans there. And they invited me down to sing the national anthem and talk with the guys and ladies, veterans who had done so much for us and who continue to do for us. And it was just a great day. It was a beautiful sunny day out, and Joe Manchin is Senator Manchin. is a great guy, and I enjoy talking with him whenever I run into him. And it was a good feeling to support the troops and support the work that you guys are doing.
And you know, both Joe Blunt and Joe Coleman have volunteered their time to come down and sing for the Always Free Honor Flight folks that come in. World War II veterans, Korea veterans, Vietnam veterans, and both you guys are veterans as well, the National Guard and the Air Force. So thank you for your service. All right, I'm enjoying this photo album. This is a family photo. Oh, wait, what is this?
Wow. Who is that guy?
Joe Coleman, Get It Off the Ground. Now, I have heard this song. This was the smack dab in the middle of the disco era.
Yeah, well.
Put your feet on the floor and move it. Tell me about Get It Off the Ground. This actually, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but this actually I think was a hit somewhere in Asia. It was a big hit, right?
In Asia, it was a hit. In Italy, this was a Italian record label that first signed it. That's the first iteration there. Pano record in Italy, was in the Benelux countries, Belgium, Holland, and some play in England on Ariola records. It was the young Joe Coleman trying to figure out how to break out and do his thing. That was a fun time, a learning time. I learned a lot about the business, this was the culmination of that first effort, moving to New York and saying I'm going to make it as Joe Coleman in this business, and that's where it all began on that side of the business.
And there's a dance remix of that song too that I've heard that actually still gets some club airplay. So
yeah, to be perfectly honest, I've gotten it's become somewhat of a collector's item, believe it or not. The 12-inch, I'm contacted all the time. We're desperately trying. How much you want for it? And that kind of stuff like that. So it's just a shock to me, but a pleasant one to think that it would be something that would be lasting. Yeah.
It's amazing what you can find. You know, everything lives on in the internet now, and you can still see it. All right, here's a Drifters award. Joe Blunt, tell me about this. What is this? Oh, wait a minute. I see this over your shoulder, too. This is the same award, I think. Is that right?
Uh-oh.
Oh, I think we've lost your audio. Joe, I apologize. We see you, but we can't hear you. You've went away. Joe Coleman, you may be able to pick up that story. Is this?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is.
All right.
Okay.
So what is this award?
That was actually an award for a recording that was done. It was actually a collection of songs that sold over 1 million copies in the UK.
Wow.
That was an award. It was a presentation award to us for the album. It was actually a collection of several Drifter hit songs.
Oh, that's fantastic. You got a Sony Lifetime Achievement Award for all that work with the Drifters too, right?
Yeah, that was quite an experience as well. We spent a lot of time over there, I guess. Over the years, the group became very popular there. And it was quite an honor to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from Sony Music company, label, and so forth. Wound up with latter years. So I was quite honored by that.
I bet. Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt are our guests today on Zoom into Books from HeadlineBooks.com. If you'd like an autographed copy of My Time to Shine, their life story by J. Michael Willard, we have a limited number of autographed copies available, and you can get them at the link in the chat room, or you can visit the HeadlineBooks.com website and find out more as we talk to these two living legends in the music business. We've got some more questions coming in. I want to see these photos. You guys are in a carriage. Joe Coleman looks like a Cinderella moment. What is happening here?
We were invited to be part of the Cherry Blossom Festival parade a few years back, and that was quite an honor. We did the circle around with the cherry blossoms, being hometown boys. We're all from Washington, D.C. This was extra special, and got to step out on the street, and we did a couple of songs on ABC national network. And it was a great time, great experience, and a great honor.
So, Joe Coleman, while I'm talking to you about this, you know, we've got you and Mr. Blunt on the interview today. You performed for many years with Glenn Leonard. Now in Voices of Classic Soul, you're performing with Theo Peoples, who was in both, I think the only guy ever in both the Four Tops and the Temptations. Glenn, I understand, is sort of semi-retired, but is working a lot with his Temptations review group in Europe. I guess when all this is over, this pandemic is over, but that's where he spends most of his time, right, Glenn Leonard?
Yes, Glenn. That's the reason for the change. Glenn was getting so much attention in the European market with his Temptations review, the Glenn Leonard's Temptations review, until it was conflicting with our schedule to a degree that we would either have to cancel gigs, or Joe and I would show up as Joe and Joe, which is fine, but the whole concept was on a different level. So we got together, the three of us, and talked it out, and realized that there was probably time for Glenn to pursue that opportunity, because it is a very substantial one. And so we very amicably parted ways of our old and dear friends, known each other all our lives. And so it was a little painful to have to even make that change, but Theo stepped in, and we'll talk about Theo as you lead us into it. Theo Peoples, and we've just continued on as Voices of Classic Soul.
Very good. Joe Blunt, Joe Coleman, our guest today. Now, I see Kathy Teets from Headline Books and Headline Books author Rick Robinson, who's a bestseller and award winner. Who's the other tall, skinny guy? He looks familiar, the dreadlock guy. Joe Blunt, who is that guy?
His face looks familiar.
It's like you've seen him on television or something.
Yeah, I think that's Landau Eugene Murphy Jr.
I believe it is. The America's Got Talent winner from season 6 on tour. You guys have done some tours together, and what's it like for you, Joe Blunt, whenever you're touring or you're performing with a younger guy? You're out with Theo Peoples now in Voices of Classic Soul, or when you perform with Landau, and you have these young artists that come up to you and they say, "Oh, I've been listening to you all my life. I want some advice from you." What do you say to those folks?
Yeah, it's either that or, "Oh yeah, my grandfather used to love you guys."
Oh, that's tough. That's
Something like that. Actually, it's always a pleasure working with young artists that are the caliber of Landau, for one. And Landau, first of all, is a great guy to work with. He really is. Fun guy to be around, and very talented to perform. And likewise, Theo, all the experience that he's had, even though he's, I guess, young compared to us, but he's been around. He spent a lot of time with Temptations, of course, and the Four Tops, and very accomplished singer and musician. So it's worked out quite well, and we really love working with Theo. It's been a pleasure.
So, Joe Coleman, now that you guys are singing with Theo Peoples, it brings a whole different kind of dynamic in. You've never sung, I guess, these Four Top songs before, so that must be a treat, because that brings a whole new group of these legendary Motown songs into the Voices of Classic Soul.
Man, it just takes us. I mean, it's amazing. I've heard these songs over the years, and of course, I've always considered their lead singer to be one of the baddest cats in the world. Levi is just an amazing cat. But when we got up close with those songs and realized just how powerful they were from coming from the stage, it brought us to another level. It was just we knew that we were on the next plane, and so it's just been very enjoyable. Theo is an amazing vocalist, and so singing those songs has just added another dimension. Yes, it has.
Very good. And as we leave this photo of Landau and Rick Robinson, maybe we'll be able to talk the publisher into having him do one of these Zoom into books calls. He's going to have a tough act to follow, though, after Joe Blunt and Joe Coleman. From My Time to Shine, these guys are members of Voices of Classic Soul, and the books are autographed. They're autographed and ready to go out, and if you'd like to pick one up, visit headlinebooks.com and order My Time to Shine, and you get free shipping while you're watching this presentation. So free shipping on My Time to Shine. And Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt, our guests today. All right, we're going to ask or answer a couple of these questions in the chat room here before we wrap up, because lots of folks want to ask you guys questions, and thank you for spending time together. Joe Coleman, major lesson in the music business that you've learned, and how does it impact your life now?
For me, I think the main thing I learned in this business was perseverance. Not that, you know, I mean, it's to persevere, to believe in yourself, trust in your own abilities, and of course, trust in the Lord. I'm a strong believer that God is the head of all of this. But, you know, people ask me, were you still singing? And I say, that's what I do. Of course, I'm still singing. This is what I do. And that, you know, it's that belief in myself that it's going to be all right. I've had some hard times. I think you were leading me there, and I didn't go. But there was a time when I was on a park bench in Central Park.
Wow. With
one dime in my pocket, literal one dime. And that was probably about 1982. And some of it's my own fault for sure, doing things I shouldn't have been doing and hanging out and just overly enjoying myself and not paying attention to detail, and found myself out there. And but I always knew that it was going to work out, that God was going to get me through it. Back then, a dime cost 10 cents. I mean, a phone call, cost one dime. And
right.
I refused to use that dime to call for help, because I just knew it would be all right. And I ultimately ended up using that dime to call the gentleman who was looking for a new singer for the Platters, and got the gig. You know,
that's one of the amazing stories in the book, that you had one thin dime, as the song goes,
right,
literally to your name, and you used that to call, and that's what got you the opportunity to sing with the Platters for all those years. All right, I'm looking at some of these other questions here. It looks like in one of the pictures you were with the Surgeon General, Dr. Regina Benjamin. All right.
I'm so embarrassed to not been. She's a dear friend, and I just blanked out on it. She's a wonderful woman, and did great service to our country.
That's all right. We're getting lots of questions and lots being thrown at you here. To answer the question, Joe Blunt and Paula Blunt have been married for 43 years. 43 years. Wow. That's all right. And in the middle of a global pandemic, you're in the house together all the time now. Are you going to make it to 44 years? That's the question.
That is not a question. That is a fact.
Correct answer. Here's a question from Facebook. Great interview, marvelous history. Congratulations, Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt. Joe Blunt, what is the trophy that is over your shoulder? I see sort of a glass trophy that's right next to your book. What is that?
Okay. Well, that's the Lifetime Achievement Award that I received from Sony Music.
Oh, that's the actual award that you got?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, bring it up. Let's take a closer look. Don't drop it.
But you can see it any better or
yeah.
Not. Sony Music.
That's fantastic. And they've actually done some, again, I know from reading the book, Drifters Legends events in England where they brought back some of the folks from the past. That must be great to reconnect and sing together with those folks after all those years.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Always interesting to get with folks that you haven't seen in a long time. And Drifters' history has had so many different singers who have come in and out of the group at one time or another. And it's always good to unite those folks.
Joe Coleman, here's a question from someone who's watching today, from Nick. Are you guys doing any work with younger folks who are interested in musical careers? Joe Coleman, you work with them? Do you advise them? And what piece of advice would you give? You talked about perseverance, but somebody who's interested as a young person in music, what would you tell them? You've been a producer, songwriter, and arranger. You've done it all.
Yeah.
So is there one thing you could sort of crystallize it down?
Well, learn your craft. Learn your craft. The young guys like myself, when we got into the business, we kind of just hit the ground running. We weren't necessarily keying in on the business of music. I tell the young people that the show business is 20% show, 80% business. If you don't have your business together, you will be sadly watching someone else count your money. So it's very important that you get into the mechanics of the business, believe in yourself, study and learn, and that sort of thing. I want to say I do a lot of work with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington, which is an amazing and wonderful organization. And I work with a gentleman by the name of Tony Smith, who's the kind of like the director of the music and entertainment piece of that. And so we've done numerous events and things to try to work with young people and get them heading in the right direction and keeping them focused on moving in the right direction. Yeah.
Fair enough. Joe Coleman, Joe Blunt, our special guest today on Zoom into Books with Headline Books. Joe Blunt, question for you, and it's actually from two different folks who are asking similar questions. How do you feel about the technology changes in the music industry? How has it changed it? And would you consider in this time doing a virtual performance? Because you can't, be out on tour now. So, and that is interesting. We just showed some record albums, and of course, no more albums, no more cassettes. 8 tracks are long gone, not even CDs now. Now it's lots of downloads. So Joe Blunt, what about technology? How has that changed how you do what you do?
Well, just the fact that we're here right now doing this is a great indication of just how much the world has changed in terms of technology. Music business, like any other business, it has to change with time. And there's so many new innovations now that, in some respects, make it easier to reach out to a broader audience,
right,
through technology such as what we're doing here. And I think it's a great thing. It's something that music business, like any other business, needs to build on. And they're constantly coming out with new ideas. It's a fascinating time. In spite of all the whole pandemic and all these other things, it's just an amazing time in the world of technology. Fortunately, it has had a great impact on the music. There was a time when something like this was going on, none of this kind of thing would have been possible. But now we're able to stay connected in ways that we never could before.
Joe Coleman, what say you? Would you ever consider doing a virtual concert? Those have become quite the rage these days, where you would perform from your home. Joe Blunt says, yeah, the technology is a good thing. Joe Coleman, would you ever do a virtual concert?
Well, we're working on one. We're planning on trying to do something very soon with the Voices of Classic Soul. Of course, Theo is in St. Louis, so it blows our mind to even consider this, but we are certainly going to be doing this probably within the next week or so to present and sing for our fans and to thank the first responders and all of those that have stepped in the gap for us, and to encourage people to keep on doing what they need to do to
there you go,
with the masks and the gloves and washing your hands and all that thing. But we want to just let you know that we're still here and that we're with you, and we're all in this thing together. With God's help, we're going to get through it flying colors.
I just had a fan that said, I am so there for a virtual concert. I love it.
Right. That's a good thing.
I love it. Joe Blunt, here's a great question. What is it that makes these songs that you guys sing so timeless? And I would add to that, to timeless, they cut across all barriers. Little kids to elderly folks love these songs. Doesn't matter what color your skin is. Everybody loves these classics from the Drifters, the Platters, and the Four Tops, the Temptations. But what's the essence that makes them timeless?
Well, probably a lot of things. I think the lyrical content has a lot to do with it. And, most of these songs are basically typical love songs that people relate certain life experiences to. You find that certain songs always conjure up images of things that you're going through in life, or people that you've come across in life, whatever the case may be. And I like to think that these songs are songs that will last forever. It's just one of those kind of things. For one thing, the great songwriters on the days that these songs were recorded, and I think that had a great impact on the music industry as a whole because of the great songs themselves. That's where it all starts.
Joe Coleman, you tell a great story in concert about one of the Platters' biggest songs was actually a standard, a Great American Songbook standard by Jerome Kern. And I love that story. Which song is it that he wrote that became a huge hit for the Platters?
Oh, that was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Yes. And the story goes, Mrs. Kern did not like the Platters' version of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes because she thought it was a little bit too, the word was risque. When we go into, oh, I of course replied, and she just hated it. She did not like that. Oh, took my husband's genteel song of love and unrequited love and turned it into something, suggestive. And so that went on until they received the first royalty check. And then no further concerns about all
Everything is fine at that point.
Everything's fine. We're lovely, doing good.
Oh man! Well, we're almost out of time. I got a great comment here from Kathy who says these songs help us hold on to our youth. It's amazing to hear them again and be transported back in time. I believe they still have a few copies of the autographed "My Time to Shine" books from Michael Willard. The story of Joe Coleman and Joe Blunt. I hate to even bring it up, but there's all kinds of requests here. Would you guys consider singing a little something?
Mm-hmm.
And I know Joe Blunt, your audio is a little dicey, so I think Joe Coleman, you're going to have to take the lead on this.
Oh my goodness! What will it be? What will it be? Oh, see, I guess I am going to stick out. Have to stick out there, Joe. Is it on me, or are we going to try the boardwalk? What you want to do? We're talking.
Tell you what, I'll try to start something, and you come on in after. How about that?
Okay, let's rock and roll.
Can we try that?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway.
On Broadway, there's always
magic in the air.
On Broadway.
When you walk, I thought you were coming in there.
Okay, you tricked me. When you're walking down the street and you ain't had enough to eat,
it'll run right off,
yep,
and you're nowhere. On Broadway.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. With the digital delay across the Potomac River. I love it.
We go like this.
Oh, that was excellent. Yeah. Joe Coleman, who spent 22 years as the lead singer of the Platters, Joe Blunt, 10 years with the Drifters, now members of Voices of Classic Soul. We're getting lots of virtual applause from all over the internet right now. We may have broke the internet with that one today, fellas.
My Lord. Yeah.
If you'd like to hear more about their life story, the books are already autographed by Joe, and their lifetime friend Glenn Leonard, and you can get them at headlinebooks.com, or the link is in the chat room. Also, I want to remind Shaylee in our office, be sure to post that song clip from The True Reflection so you can hear a young Joe Coleman in his prime. And perhaps these guys are still in their prime, in their 70s, still singing. Joe Blunt, do you ever see a time where you're going to stop singing?
No, probably not. Done it for so long, it's part of me now. And between singing in church and singing with group and all that, it's too much of a part of me to let it go.
What about you, Joe Coleman? Is there a retirement in your future where you're just going to kick back and put your toes in the sand?
I don't think that day is going to come. It won't be my choice if it happens. You know, the Lord may lead me to another place, but right now I'm just going to keep on singing until there's no more singing to be done. You know, so we good.
Will there be ever a time where we'll see you dressed like this on stage again? Is that a possibility?
There's not a chance in the world that will happen again. Unless it starts with $1 million. I'll do whatever you got to do.
Then everything is negotiable in show business.
That's right. We'll work it out.
I love it. I love it. All right. Before those autograph books are all gone, because there is a limited supply and because of what's going on now, we can't ship them around. Be sure to log on to headlinebooks.com or click on the link in the chat room and grab an autograph book from Joe Coleman, Joe Blunt, and their friend Glenn Leonard. And visit them online as well at voicesofclassicsoul.com. Voicesofclassicsoul.com. You guys are not only Washington, D.C. legends, you're true rock and roll music royalty, and I am blessed and honored to call you both my friends. Thank you for making the time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Burke.
I want to sing something to the first responders and to everyone out there. We you know, just to kind of sign off, right?
The virtual stage is yours as we wrap things up. Mr. Joe Coleman.
Here we go. Only you can make this world seem right. Only you can make the darkness bright. When you hold my hand, I understand the magic that you do. You're my dream come true, my one and only you. Hey.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And thanks to all our essential workers out there, grocery store employees, our truck drivers, our medical personnel, our pharmacy workers. We sure appreciate you helping and helping us to stay home and stay safe during this time. Joe Blunt, Joe Coleman, Headline Books, thank you all so much. We love you. Pick up a copy of the book, My Time to Shine by J. Michael Willard. It's autographed already and will be shipped to you with free shipping.